If you're watching this video, it means that you're probably interested in joining our Urban Abbey year, in which a group of us will slowly and carefully read, study and hopefully be enlightened by one of the greatest Christian literary works of all time, Dante's Divine Comedy. In the ancient and medieval worlds, there were two main types of stories: tragedies and comedies. Tragedies ended badly and comedies ended happily. In other words, we don't mean comedy in the modern sense of the word. Even though Dante does occasionally reveal his sense of humour, the work wasn't intended to make us laugh.
Dorothy Sayers, a close friend of C.S. Lewis, Tolkien, T.S. Eliot and many others, tells us that the ideal way of reading the Divine Comedy would be to start at the first line and go straight through to the end, surrendering, she writes, to the vigour of the storytelling and the swift movement of the verse, and not bothering about any historical allusions or theological explanations, which do not occur in the text itself. That, she says, is how Dante himself tackles his subject.
Dante just jumps right into his story and moves quickly down into the very depths of hell, up the difficult cornices of Mount Purgatory, and up into the very heights of heaven, until he finally sees the vision of God himself in his unfathomable beauty and simplicity.
That said, for modern readers like us, it might be helpful to have some help along the way of our journey. And that's why we think reading this great work together might be especially helpful, as all of us will have varying skills to offer in allowing all of us together to understand the story more deeply.
For many people, the Divine Comedy appears something not really for the modern person. We might be tempted to think of it as high art, meant only for the initiated, or, still worse, as a work that is primarily of academic interest, or highbrow, as they say. Dante himself would be horrified at this. Dante wrote his comedy for you and for me, not for professionals. He took the radical step in the Middle Ages of deliberately writing his comedy in the common language of Italian, not in Latin. He wrote his story for ordinary people in order that we might understand better what is going on in our lives as individuals and our shared lives together.
Dante's comedy is all about the peculiar battle between good and evil that takes place in every human soul, the sometimes ugly and blatant battles, but more often than not the more subtle battles that almost seem logical and even beautiful at the time.
This is a battle which Dante would describe as, above all, the struggle between love and, what should we call it? Between love and ego? Between love and pride? Or, since Nietzsche, perhaps we have come to see it even more clearly, the battle between love and will.
Before we move forward, there are a few things to get clear from the start. This story is not about what we might call the afterlife. Dante is not a certain kind of American preacher who is trying to describe the end times. Dante's story is about the battle within us, between good and evil, between love and will, in all its forms.
His story is about the eternal implications of our ordinary lives, here and now. The second thing to keep in mind is that there are always at least three things going on when we read the Divine Comedy. The first thing is the story itself. It's a fun ride just as it is. The details of Dante's journey, just as a story, are a great read, and I expect he wanted us simply to enjoy the ride of his storytelling.
But within the story there is something else going on. Dante is weaving together, within the fabric of his story, an allegory, which is simply to say he's telling a parallel story within the story that tells a deeper tale about that battle within each of us that we're talking about.
So we have the layer of the story and the layer of allegory. And thirdly, there is what we might call the historical. Because our lives are necessarily historical and not abstract and theoretical, Dante will fill hell, purgatory and paradise with his friends, his enemies, popular characters of the day, and many famous sinners and saints.
Dante once told his patron that he wrote his poem to bring readers from misery to happiness. This great story is for people who are searching for meaning and for healing. It's for those who want to be able to approach questions of good and evil in a way that is more subtle, more profound, and certainly more Christian than mere morality. We hope you can join us.